Yeah, my name's Gill Kendon. I work at the International Study and Language Institute at the University of Reading. And so this talk has something kind of in common with the previous one from Andrew. He was looking at a PhD course before and after the pandemic. I'm kind of doing a similar thing with our pre-sessional course. And our pre-sessional course, for those of, in case there's anybody who doesn't know, these are intensive short courses that students take in the summer generally, because they don't quite meet the language level to start on their academic programs in the autumn. We have, several hundred students who take these. The numbers have changed over this time. Many of them are postgraduate, but there are also some undergraduate students as well. My picture on the front is the double-decker bus that comes to the university. So this is they're on their journey to start at the university. So the talk it's kind of traces the evolution of our summer pre-sessional English course. From before the pandemic, during it, and then where we are working now. And during that time, we kind of had a refresh of the syllabus anyway. And what I'm reflecting on is what was, in effect, the impact of the pandemic on the new form of the course. I'm going to be focusing more on the shape of the course, the mode of delivery rather than the content, although that too changed. So in terms of the outline, I'm going to do sort of the story of the PSE, pre-sessional English, then and now. Think a little bit about the context within that, those changes, and then reflect on the transformation, the benefits and the challenges we're facing, and the reception, and a little bit about where we're going next. So before the pandemic, I first taught at the university as a temporary pre-sessional teacher, and that was in 2012. But in 2019, this was very similar timetable. We had a lot of in-person teaching, 19 and a half contact hours. The students were all on campus. And it was quite intensive. There was some sort of homework, but that was mostly writing, formative assignments. We used course books, physical paper course books. Some of you may recognize these. These were published actually and written by members of the department. I think these days only one of the authors is still working with us, and most have retired. We were given a route, a map to work through the book so that the students all had a similar experience. In terms of assessment, there were kind of two components. There was a traditional in-person exam written on paper, and then there was a teacher grade, which slightly put the teacher, I felt, reflecting on one of the other talks about teacher identity, on the one hand, I was there as, the guide and the mentor and support for these students. But on the other hand, I had this gatekeeping role that I was going to give them a grade which would either help them or not help them proceed onto their academic course. So it put the teacher in a slightly odd position. The pandemic happened, and we had to pivot to online delivery. So suddenly we went from all teachers, all students being in person to all the students being online. At that point, we were thinking online was, difficult. We didn't know how to do it. So we really cut back on the number of synchronous hours, and we had lots of interactive independent study. So lots of the I think we'd, in a sense, drawn inspiration from the MOOCs that massive open online courses. Not quite sure which way the O's go there. So that the students were doing lots of independent study, and then they came together as a class in quite a limited way. We were very lucky in that we had good skills within the department for creating, online materials. So the main repository of materials was our virtual learning experience, virtual learning platform, which was Blackboard, and we created, a number of tasks for the students to work through. Some of these, such as the one on the right, were, download a worksheet, work through it, watch a video. Some were supported by tools. So the one on the bottom left, we were using a tool called Flipgrid, which supported speaking for spoken language, and like a little discussion board. And then we created some interactive online materials. So these interactive online materials were, the brainchild of Jonathan Smith, which some of you may know, on a platform called Xerti. And here's an example. I'm not going to risk a live demo, but the students clicked on the link in the task overview that we could see here, and then they'd get taken to a kind of a web page, in effect, that they could navigate through by clicking on the arrows. This would present some information, had some integrated videos, and then also had, interactive tasks, gap fill exercises, where the students got, immediate feedback. So these were, a lot better than just sending a worksheet. They got, they got feedback on their answers, and we thought they were more engaging, and a good way to go forward. For the second year, we still had many of our students online, but we did have some students on campus. We sort of learnt from our experience of the previous year, and identified, it would be better to have more synchronous classes. The students weren't feeling that sense of community very much, so we went back to 2 hours per day, so not as many as we had pre-pandemic. And I think this reflected, the skills we'd built in teaching online, and also, learning and reflecting on the experience. Okay. In terms of assessment, this was the same in both these years. We still had the idea of the teacher grade. Now, obviously, the teachers were seeing the students less, and other people have spoken about how hard it is to, get to know your online students. But there were, progress tests, there were, quizzes and formative tasks that the teachers could draw on. Our paper-based exam got converted to an online format with some lockdown browser technology, some technology to try and reduce unauthorized help that they might be getting. So that was before and during the pandemic. So post-pandemic, so where are we now? So this coincided with the launch of a new syllabus. It was something that was in the planning and it kind of got interrupted by the pandemic. So we had new materials coming anyway, and we had a chance to, relaunch and replan the programme. So from 2022 and 2023, I just found the slide from 2023. We moved to 2 90-minute taught lessons each day. So this is more than we had during the pandemic, but not as many as we had before the pandemic. We retained the idea of having guided independent study. That's what GIS stands for. So set tasks for the students to do outside the class. So it's kind of a blend of the pre and the pandemic versions, and having morning only lessons facilitated maintaining our online offering. So now, again, in contrast to pre-pandemic, we offer our course both in-person option and in an online version. Obviously, many of our students come from Asia, and so with the time difference, offering the live classes in the morning kind of works for both parties. Okay. What about the materials? So we've retained digital teaching materials, but we didn't have capacity to build the interactive online materials for everything. And there was a question of what we were going to use in the live class. So what we've moved to are fillable PDFs. So we've got PDF documents with interactive fields that the students can type into. So this gives us increased flexibility. If we need to make a change, we can do that in a way that we couldn't with the printed materials. So they're easier to keep up to date. There's a lower environmental footprint. We give these to the students in a digital format, so we've got much less paper, and we've got the same experience for online and in-person students. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say there. Okay. In terms of assessment, we've now got coursework rather than the teacher grade. And I think, speaking as a teacher, that I'm happier with that rather than this sort of conflict between a gatekeeper and a guide and support and mentor. So we've got 2 specific pieces of coursework. We've got a written critical review for the postgraduate students, and the undergraduate students do a case study. So we've moved away from the essay-based course that we used to have to look at different genres. And these are both where students are applying knowledge and thinking critically about knowledge and rather than I'll leave it there. Yeah. They also then do a reflective presentation. We've retained the online version of the exam, and we're currently looking at different lockdown browser technology to maintain task integrity. Okay. So that's a sort of whistle-stop tour of where we were, where we went, and where we are now. I just wanted to look at the wider context of it, and think about what's changed during this period in terms of technology use at university. I couldn't resist including this slide. This I've stolen from a keynote talk from Heidi McKee at eTour last year, and this was written in the context of artificial intelligence and the reaction to it. But I think many of us will recognise this kind of curve, either the culture shock, and I think we all went through a culture shock of oh no, we've got to go online, it's going to be horrible. So in the blue, oh, that's okay, there are tools, we can use them. To, oh, but they don't work very well, do they? Oh, my students are dropping out and I can't see them. To, coming to a sense of, well, a plateau of productivity, they call it here. And I'm sure most of you recognize some of this, that it wasn't a smooth ride, that it was, oh, it's terrible, or oh, it's great, and then oh no, it's not, to some sense of equanimity. Okay. So thinking about technology use, there's an organisation called UCISA, which is a professional body for digital practitioners in education, and they looked at tool use they did a pulse survey between 2020 and 2022, and what they found was that in terms of tools at UK higher education establishments, there was more central support and an increase in the members of staff that could support academics and teachers such as myself, and the provision and support for technology within universities has definitely increased, and this was probably largely in response to the COVID pandemic. In terms of delivery, and this isn't just about pre-sessional courses, this is in general, they found that there's been a growth in blended learning, and I'll come on to look at definitions in a second. Fully online learning is there, but it's not the majority of courses, and this idea of hybrid high flex delivery is not common, and by that hybrid delivery is where the student can choose whether they come in person or whether they attend online, so a kind of hybrid session as we're doing today. So this is a slide from 2017 that one of my colleagues developed, and I'm including it here to kind of look at the language and the way that we were kind of talking about online teaching and technology supported teaching. We were talking about blended learning. There was a lot about flipped learning. and this was, the hot topic, and we were talking about distance learning for online, and in particular MOOCs, which Liz mentioned in her keynote talk. In terms of, more recently, the idea of blended learning has been been dissected a little, and we've got blended learning supplementary, and I think this is now the new normal, that lecture notes and materials are supplied on a virtual learning environment, and that's just kind of normal. In terms of, and then that's being distinguished from blended learning active, which is where there are, there's much more of a conscious, parts are synchronous in class, and other parts are asynchronous tasks that students do outside the classroom. We've got the idea of the hybrid high flex that I was explaining before, and we seem to now talk about fully online courses rather than distance learning, a change of terminology. In terms of why changes happen, this analysis from Selwyn I thought is quite useful. There's internal drivers of, just wanting to do things better and there being new things happening. External drivers where, something is changing in the wider context, and that might become pertinent for us on our pre-sessional course if our students move on to their academic courses and are being assessed in different ways. That may mean that the requirements of what we do on our course changes, and therefore we would have to make changes. And then there's disruption. I'm not sure I'd call COVID-19 pandemic innovation, but I think AI certainly will be. How am I doing for time? Okay, I need to speed up a bit. Okay, some of you may know this model of digital transformation from Puente Dura, which is looking at, different levels of transformation. I'm happy to share the slides afterwards. I think I need to move on. So, reflections on our program transformation. In terms of timetabling, there has been, quite a definite change. We're providing fewer synchronous contact hours. This, I think, in thinking about the drivers and the benefits, it's going to be more closely aligned to the way students study on academic courses. The pattern we had before was a bit more like school with the number of live hours. It allows us to support online groups, and it provides better conditions for teachers. We did have a bit of a reputation for being, a heavy workload place, and that's now been eased. In terms of challenges, there are some about expectations for contact hours, and that's reflected in a report from GISC, which is another, national organisation looking at digital resources in the UK, and they've got a report on international student experience, and many international students anticipated more face-to-face learning and teaching. So we need to set those expectations. And they also highlight the need for blended learning to be carefully integrated to add value. And I think that this. I stole this from some of our internal teaching materials, looking that, independent study, it could be something that's preparation for the live session. So, for example, doing some reading before a discussion in class, or it could be consolidation, so further language work on something that you've been using in class. In terms of materials, yeah, we've moved away from physical books, and our admin team are very happy that they no longer have to fill, bags of books for the students. It gives us more flexibility, and I think I've covered that. I think in terms of the challenges, there's a little bit of building familiarity that we need to do, and having the device in the classroom is that kind of getting in the way of the personal conversations. Assessment, we've reduced the amount of assessments. That's kind of the main thing. That was from our accreditation visit feedback that we had, and again, parity for our online and in-person things. How long have I got? Have I got a few more minutes?
I would say 1 minute.
1 minute.
And then we won't have time for questions, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, we started late. Yeah. Okay. The students were very happy. The staff were very happy. Although they did mention some overhead of teaching face-to-face and online, but no, they were very happy. Our accreditation feedback, our re-accreditation was very good. We were really pleased with that. Future challenges, I've mentioned most of these, and I think these are coming up in other talks around, the challenges of AI, the digital divide. These are things I've heard in other places. So yes, we changed a lot, but it all worked. My references.
Yeah,
thank you.